Okay, Nathan Stanley asks, Mr. Whittle, call me Bill, please. As a young, forward-thinking conservative, how can I best influence those around me? As a true conservative, I have no interest in politics, and I also don't plan to enter the world of media. I know the importance of marketing conservatism in the culture, making it cool, sexy, etc. But in my eyes, it is best to live out my principles in an appealing way and let others come to their own conclusions. Is there anything else that can be done other than my BillWhittle.com membership? Thank you very much. Thoughts? Any other strategies? I said before, we can't beat these people because Russ never sleeps, and they never sleep. For progressives, politics is everything. And when I say everything, I mean it's everything. Politics is their job. Politics is their hobby. Politics is their religion. Politics is where all their friendship are. Their friends are, their friendship is. Politics, politics, politics. Why are they so addicted to politics? Because politics gives them the power and the money that they could never go out and get on their own. You just have to understand that. It's about money and power that they could not get on their own. It's much easier to tax a business than it is to run a business. You can just put whatever you want to. It's like, give me that. Bernie wants to take 97 cents on every dollar you make. What gives him the moral right to do that? Well, it's for the poor. Says who? Says who, Bernie? How do you get to decide who needs money and not? What makes you qualified? Forget the intellectual qualifications. Who do you morally think you are, taking everything that somebody makes and deciding who to give it to? You're not God. Stop acting like one. You're just an old man who's never had a job a day in his life. You're not qualified morally or intellectually to make these kind of decisions. It's robbery. Call it what it is. You just want some power because you've never worked a day in your life. Okay. And back to this, I'm kind of getting to your point here. One of the things that I heard a lot of in one of these schools was somebody said, a CEO makes $5 million and most of his workers make $50,000. And is it fair that a CEO would make 1,000 times more than his workers? And I said, well, is it fair that LeBron James gets paid more than the worst person in the NBA? And everybody said, yeah. Why? Well, because he performs better. Why does that mean he should get paid more? Well, because people sell more tickets to watch him. Yeah, okay, great. He's worth more money. We can agree on this. Why is it okay for Beyonce to make $30 million and not give a penny of it to anybody else? She probably has a staff of 2 or 3 or something. But a guy who makes $5 million running a company that's 50,000 people in it, they're all getting paychecks and they're all going home with their livelihood. Why is that bad? They can't answer these questions. They've never heard them. They've never heard them before. They've never, ever heard them before. They've just never have, Nathan. And that's why, the messaging is so important. But when I say they never sleep and that politics is their life, their message is going out there all the time. And we don't have to match their message in terms of duration or breadth of exposure because we have light on our side. We don't have to unpaper all of the windows. We just have to tear a hole in one of the papered up windows and let some light in here. And the more light that comes in, the easier it is to tear more of these things down. So look, if your question is, I want to just go off and be a businessman, lead my own life by my own principles, how can I help the conservative cause? Then I would say go out and make a ton of money, which is certainly your right. Keep virtually all of it, but spend some of it on helping people that are doing the messaging because, and you have, and I'm very grateful, because they do. They will go and make money in Hollywood, movies in Hollywood. For example, Redacted. I mean, Redacted was a just stick it to George Bush, make the military look bad, make the country look bad. It's directed by Brian De Palma. Probably cost several $7, $8 million. It made $25,000 domestically. That's total gross take in the entire country. And the people that put up the money for that didn't expect that this film was going to make them rich. They prepared to lose their money. And they're prepared to lose their money because the progressives know, look, if we spend some money now, we're going to get all the money. We're going to take everything. We're going to take 97% of the people that have stuff because they work for it. And so you have to understand that the left is putting resources into this all the time, and we're not. It's incredible to me, and not just to me because obviously I have BillWhittle.com, but I've talked to guys that have done fundraising for me, for messaging, for other things, for getting out there and trying to win this fight. And they hear their friends sending them emails going, my God, the country's going down the toilet. What can we do? If there's only something we can do. We said, well, here's something you can do. You can donate some money to these guys. They're having an effect. Nothing. They don't get anything. What's the return? The return is you may get to keep some of your money. If we lose this fight, you're going to lose everything. They're going to take everything you've got. I mean, they're really going to take everything you've got. And we just don't see it that way. We're businessmen, we're practical. But they understand that this is their pathway to money and power, and it's their only pathway to money and power, and so they use it. And it's the same kind of people that get into a bureaucracy. See, the reason that the left is doing as well as they're doing is because the politics gets their A-team. The smartest people on the left go into politics. The smartest people on the right go into business or the military. And that's the problem. Our politicians are our third or fourth stringers. Their politicians are their first stringers. The exception everybody talks about, of course, is Ronald Reagan. But what's interesting about Ronald Reagan? Well, the thing that's interesting to me about Ronald Reagan, and the reason I think Ronald Reagan was so successful, was because Ronald Reagan wasn't a businessman. Ronald Reagan used to be a liberal. Ronald Reagan used to be a Democrat. Ronald Reagan understood the media. People loved Ronald Reagan emotionally before he ever ran for office. He connected with people on a level that nobody else on our team could, but that the Democrats do all the time. Bill Clinton connects on people at the level that Ronald Reagan did, and so does Obama. Hillary doesn't, but the rest of them do, and that's why they're successful, because they put their resources into it, they put their best people into it, and they connect emotionally, because they know how. And there's very few of us on our team that knows how, but some of us do. And I think that's why Andrew Breitbart was so successful. Andrew Breitbart was emotional. Andrew Breitbart was a fighter, and he was emotional. He wasn't a George Will. You know, he didn't have the steel spectacles and the bow tie and all the rest of these affectations. Breitbart was a fighter who understood pop culture, and he saw what they were doing to him all the time. He could hear that invisible dog whistle. He was interviewed on C-SPAN once. I think his second book came out, Righteous Indignation, I want to say. And he was being interviewed on C-SPAN, and the C-SPAN guy said, now, Andrew, in your book here, it says, we read in your book that you had some problems with alcohol growing up. You want to talk about that? And anybody else would have said, well, yes, you know, I got over it. They'd give you the answer, right? They would answer the question. But Breitbart knows the game that they play. And he just instantly said, he didn't even hesitate. He said, you know, you've had President Obama on C-SPAN so many times I can't count. President Obama admitted that he not only took cocaine and marijuana, that he sold it. How come that never came up with him? How come it's coming up with me, but it's not coming up with him? Silence. Because he just pulled the curtain back and showed the bias. He just had that incredible ability to do it. So if you decide, look, this is not fun, this life. I do it because I need to, and I mean, I emotionally need to for the country's sake. But it's not fun to wade out into this destruction every single day, seeing, oh my God, you know, it can't get any worse than this, and then it does. They can't get away with this, and then they do. So I completely understand the idea of, look, I'm just going to go live my life morally and decently. And listen, you know, that's the most important thing. Everybody, you know, we're a country made up of citizens. The better the citizens are, the better the country is. A good example is more illuminating than a bad one. You know, a bad boss, just a complete jerk of a boss can ruin 200 people's day every day. And the converse is true. A really good man can make 200 people's day. But we do need to understand this idea about compassion, that there's nothing wrong with compassion. We're so used to being bullied into everything that they want us to do in the name of compassion, and we're so used to being told that we have to believe things that aren't true in the name of compassion, and they just use all of this compassion against us again and again and again. So we get to the point where it's like, if it's got compassion in it, we don't want it, we're going to fight it. No. What we should be fighting is putting a gun to your head and taking your charity. We need to come at these issues with compassion for our fellow citizens. It's compassionate to say that we need to stop these entitlement programs for people that are fully fit to work. That's not the mean thing to say. It's the compassionate thing to say. It's a loving thing to say, actually. It's a loving thing to say, look, you people, you Democrats, you progressives have enslaved this population, and you're trying to enslave more people every day just so they'll vote for you. You're ready to ruin their lives and make them into miserable, enraged children just so you can get your power and your money and your reelection. We think it's disgusting. We care much more about people than you do. If you really cared about people, you'd be doing something different. And the fact that Newark and Detroit and all the rest of these cities have been governed by Democrats for 70, 80 years and are absolute pits tells you how much compassion they actually have. I did that Most Shameful Injustice video, and there's a case, I want to say it's in, it's not Detroit, might have been in Washington, D.C., where a city elder, you know, relatively young black man, ordered for himself, for his office, right, because he's a city elder, he's on the council or whatever. He ordered a brand new Lincoln Navigator with a black interior. And the one that was delivered had a gray interior. So he put another $1,500 rushed and bought a second one with the black interior because he had to have it now. He didn't return the first one. Now he's got two. And that $1,500 could have gone to the school system. And you just say, this just can't possibly be true. He took the money designated for the poor people in Washington. He took the money for the people he's supposed to represent as a black leader. He took school money and police money and lights, you know, money that could go into street lights, and he bought two Lincoln Navigators for himself. Yes, he did. That's disgusting, isn't it? They don't have any sense of morals. They don't care. They don't care. It's amazing to me. You watch in, there's this great charter school I saw in Colorado. It's in Golden, Colorado. It's called the Golden View Classical Academy. Just think about that. There's Latin on the walls. You walk in, the first thing you see are pictures, oil paintings of the founders. And then you go into a lounge, and there's like, here are our 7 virtues that we value in the school. And there are things like discipline and prudence, you know, freedom. And you realize that these kids are actually getting an education. And then you realize that when they put that school in, it cost the school board their jobs. The fact that they got this conservative school in there, they recalled the entire education board, replaced them with liberals, and the liberals never would have allowed that charter. The liberals would not have allowed that school to go. They'd have allowed a school that taught Marxism, no problem, but they would have used legislation to stop kids from getting a conservative education. And when I say conservative education, I just mean, look, you're going to study Shakespeare. You're going to study the American history. If that's conservative now, I guess it is, then okay. But they will try and stop it. They're papering up the windows because they cannot let the light in. These kids at that school were the most amazingly well-educated and happy kids that I've seen since I went to British schools in Bermuda. Those schools were the same kind of rigorous places where you actually got an education. And with this whole safe spaces thing and microaggressions and all the rest of this nonsense, this generation is going to be the first generation, not only in American history, but in human history, that's going to come out of college stupider than they went in. That's really saying something. Hey, look at that.